Back in 1966, a General Motors executive was asked what exactly a Camaro was, because no one had really heard the name before. The answer from the GM executive was that it's a vicious, small animal that eats Mustangs. Well, that has not been true of all Camaros in the past. It's a little bit more true about this 2016 model, perhaps than it was even back then in 1966. The genetics of the Camaro are important to understand because this is competing in a very different kind of segment than the Camaros did when I was a kid. Because back then, the Challenger didn't exist, it had already become extinct and had not yet been resurrected, and all we had was a Ford Mustang that was not sold really in international markets. The Camaro and the Mustang were really just domestic American vehicles only, and they didn't really try and compete with any of the European entries. Today, however, we have a newer, lighter Mustang that is sold worldwide, and that caused General Motors to reach deep into their engineering parts bin and pull out all the bits that they use to compete with European luxury sedans. Therefore, this Camaro can really honestly be compared to a BMW 4 Series, and in this trim, a BMW M4 with a completely straight face. Obviously, I'm talking about driving dynamics because the styling is very different than any of the European performance sedans. We have this very aggressive, perhaps even slightly cartoonish looking front end right here. Our model has the optional HID headlamps. We have a lot of LED strips running along right here. Massive cooling grille here because we are in the SS trim with that 6.2 liter V8 engine. There was a time where the Camaro and the Mustang were considered small and light, and then of course there was a time where the Camaro and Mustang were a little on the large side and fairly heavy. For 2016, they've returned to basically small and light compared to the other options available. This is 188.3 inches long, means it's just about the same size as the Ford Mustang and only a hair larger than the BMW 4 Series. The rear of the Camaro looks very angry, although it is perhaps a little bit more demure than the front. We have quad exhaust tips on our SS trim, SS badging of course, this large spoiler right here, and you'll notice how large and flat the rear end of the Camaro is. This is to help improve aerodynamics. Of course, we're testing the SS trim, and that means that we get the 6.2 liter V8 engine out of the Corvette Stingray. It produces 455 horsepower and 455 pound-feet of torque when it's put under this hood right here. Also worth noting is that this 6.2 liter V8 engine actually produces more torque than the 5.2 liter flat plane crank engine that we see in the Ford Mustang GT350. It produces less power, but actually more torque. Front seat comfort is very comparable to the Mustang, but I would say that these seats are one notch below the Dodges and about 2 notches below what we find in the BMW 4 Series. It appears that Chevy has no illusions about the size of the rear seat. That's why they make this a 100% folding rear seat back. The Camaro inherits the lightweight construction and the sharp driving dynamics from the Cadillac ATS. Those are very good things, but it also inherits the relatively small trunk from the ATS. The ATS is on the smaller side of its segment, and this Camaro's trunk is positively tiny. At under 10 cubic feet, there are a few convertibles that actually have larger trunks than this. In addition, this opening is quite small. Now, I was able to fit 4 of these 24-inch roller bags in the trunk, but you can fit a decent amount more luggage in the Ford Mustang. Something like a BMW 4 Series will have a considerably larger trunk. It's about 50% larger. Same thing also goes for the Dodge Challenger. The overall style of the dashboard is a little bit different from the last generation Camaro, but it is still very stylized, as you can see. We have hard plastics upper in the dashboard and soft touch plastics lower in the dashboard around the airbag here for the front passenger. We have a touchscreen infotainment system right here in the center of the console, the 2 different sizes, 7-inch and this 8-inch screen. General Motors, and of course Chevy specifically, has had a number of different infotainment systems over the past few years, but they appear to be coalescing around this one software version that is very similar to Cadillac Q that we see in most of the modern Cadillac models. The model that we're testing does have the 6-speed manual transmission. Reverse is all the way over to the right and then up. And this transmission also has an electromechanical gate in it. Depending on the RPMs of the engine and the way you're driving, a gate may engage that actually causes you to go from 1st to 4th gear instead of 2nd. You can always go from 1st to 3rd if you so desire, but that gate tries to encourage you to go sort of diagonally across to 4th gear for optimum fuel economy. The steering wheel in our SS trim is leather wrapped. We also have perforated leather on each of the sides. We have mild sport grips right up top, flat bottom, SS right there on that as well. The first thing you'll notice about the Camaro, other than obviously this mind-blowing acceleration, is the noise. This vehicle sounds absolutely incredible. The 6.2 liter naturally aspirated V8 is easily the best sounding option in this category. The Mustang sounds great, don't get me wrong, and the GT350 sounds incredible as well, but nothing can quite match that sound of a large V8 engine. Obviously, we need to talk about acceleration next, because acceleration is incredible in this vehicle. We ran from 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds with this manual transmission. Now keep in mind, I'm not a professional driver. A professional driver could likely get better 0 to 60 times. If, however, you get the automatic transmission, you'll lose about half a second in that 0 to 60 time, and you'll be down there around 3.9 or 4.0 every single time, as long as you have enough traction in the rear. That's thanks to the 8-speed automatic transmission that we get optional in the Camaro. An 8-speed automatic is not too common in this mass market segment, although Chrysler has been using them in the Challenger and the Charger for a short while. Thanks to the 8-speed automatic transmission, acceleration is excellent regardless of which engine you get. The 2.0-liter turbocharged engine will go from 0 to 60 in 5.4. The 3.6 should do it in about 5.1. In terms of comparisons, this is definitely faster than the 0 to 60 time you get in the Mustang GT or the Dodge Challenger SRT 392. Depending on the drivers and the transmissions involved, this may even be faster than a GT350. This Camaro with an 8-speed automatic transmission is likely going to beat most drivers in a GT350 because it's a manual transmission only. As you'd expect from a performance vehicle, the brakes on this Camaro are enormous, and that is one of the big differences between this and certain Mustang GT models, because we get the upgraded brakes standard on the SS trim. You can actually get even more upgraded brakes if you want to, but a decent upgrade over the base Camaro brakes already comes on this model, and that's not what we get over there in the Mustang. That explains some of the price difference between those two models. That's also what allows this vehicle to go from 60 to 0 in an incredibly short 104 feet. 104 feet is actually shorter than something like an Alfa Romeo 4C, even though that is an ultra-light carbon fiber vehicle, and this doesn't use really any exotic construction. Instead, what Chevy does is they give you wide grippy tires and absolutely enormous brakes. The brakes are a good thing too, because this Camaro can go incredibly fast. Perhaps the biggest difference between this generation of the Camaro and the previous generation of the Camaro is the handling. And I'm not talking about absolute grip numbers, I'm talking about the finesse. And this really is where the relationship between this and the Cadillac ATS comes into play. Because the Cadillac ATS, honestly, is one of the best feeling compact luxury sedans available in terms of its steering feel, in terms of its handling dynamics, etc. It honestly beats the BMW 3 Series and the BMW 4 Series easily, and all of that translates right down to this Camaro. The steering ratio in the Camaro is very well balanced. It's very easy to tell exactly where the front of the vehicle is doing, and even though we have electric power steering, we get some feedback from the front tires, so you know what the tires are doing on the road. This is another area where the current generation Mustang is impressive, but the Camaro is just that next level. However, unlike some vehicles out there that excel at finesse, chassis dynamics, and feel, etc., but let you down a little bit on the grip, the Camaro definitely does not let you down on grip. Thanks to the optional magnetic ride control that our particular tester is equipped with, the ride feels more like a luxury performance car. This soaks up bumps fairly well out on the pavement. It doesn't feel rock hard stiff like previous generations of the Camaro do. Of course, the main reason that I would get the magnetic ride suspension is that it makes the Camaro much more daily driver livable than a wide variety of performance vehicles. This vehicle right here with the manual transmission may sometimes be able to beat a Ford GT350. It really depends on how good the manual transmission driver is. If everybody is hitting their shift points absolutely perfectly, this is going to be several tenths of a second slower 0 to 60 than that Ford. However, if you get the 8-speed automatic transmission, which is not available over there in the GT350, this is likely going to be consistently faster than the average GT350 driver. Now, if I were a rational Camaro shopper, I would probably stop at the 2LT trim, although I would get it nicely loaded. I would also stop at the 2-liter turbo. $30,795 is where the 2LT trim starts. I would probably add the RS package, the brake and cooling package again, the 8-speed automatic transmission package, and then the convenience package, which becomes available on the 2LT trim. The convenience package adds the excellent heads-up display that we've been seeing in this particular model. Total out the door, that would be about $36,730 again for that 2-liter turbo. The fire-breathing 6.2-liter V8 engine also comes in two different trim levels, 1SS and 2SS. Similar feature break between the two that we see down there in the 2LT, although the 2SS adds even more feature content like a standard heads-up display. $37,295 is the starting price for this engine, and the 2SS starts at $42,295. As I said, even on the SS trim, I would brake from convention and get the 8-speed automatic transmission. I would also get the 2-mode exhaust that our model has on it right here because it makes it sound absolutely incredible out on the road. And lastly, I would get the magnetic damper package as well because it helps smooth out the ride on the highway. It actually has a slight performance benefit as well. That means that my out-the-door price on the SS trim would be around $46,000. If that sounds a little pricey to you, it's important to keep in mind that the Camaro SS actually slots between the Mustang GT and the GT350 in terms of overall performance. Until we get a chance to see what Ford and Chrysler have planned for the future, the Camaro is my top pick in this segment right now, with the caveat that if you're looking for this kind of performance in a more comfortable vehicle and you're looking to give up a little bit of that performance and handling in order to get that extra comfort, then I would get the SRT 392. The SRT 392 is an incredibly good value in my book. It's 485 horsepower, it's an awful lot of fun, it gives you a very comfortable ride. However, this is definitely going to be the better handling vehicle. The Chrysler is going to be more practical, it has a bigger trunk, a bigger back seat, etc., but it's just not as much fun as the Camaro. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes. Be sure and check out those related videos down there across the bottom of your screen. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Find us over at alexandautos.com, and I'll see you next week.